Welcome to our video about SecuPi Data Security Platform, protecting sensitive data in AI. Let's start. SecuPi is a market leader in data security platform. It protects sensitive data both on-premise and in the cloud in data platforms, analytics, and Gen AI. We strongly believe that in order to protect sensitive data, you need a data security lifecycle, which means you need to discover your sensitive data, you need to monitor who's accessing it, you need to enforce access control, and then enforce different protection methodologies and privacy enhancing techniques on that sensitive data. When it comes to AI exposes the enterprise to unprecedented regulatory and operational risk. That's because there is no access control native into AI solutions. Because there is no access control, there is no reliable, fine-grained, or deterministic way to assign access to specific sensitive data for specific users. That would result in compliance failure. It will not be able to prove least privilege principle to that data, and therefore any kind of privacy regulation, financial regulation, SOX regulation, anything like that would not be able to be complied with. There is also the problem of opaque data pipelines. That means that service accounts are being used in order to access data, and therefore there is no way to understand who's the user, which means there is no control over what data goes out, who gets access to it, and what can leak into the public. Lastly, there is auditability deficit. That means there is no tamper-proof end-to-end audit trail for AI data interactions. That would result in forensics liability. There is no ability to troubleshoot and track who accessed what, why it was accessed, by whom, and how. Those logs are again mandatory for compliance reasons, but they're also very important to troubleshoot and investigate data breaches. Because of those challenges, Gartner believes that by 2029, 50% of attacks on AI will exploit access control issues. So SecuPi's solution for those challenges is to provide a data security lifecycle for AI. That means that SecuPi can discover the sensitive data, audit who's getting access to it, de-identify that sensitive data, and control access to it in real time. For that purpose, we created two enforcers. The first one is the SecuPi MCP enforcer. The SecuPi MCP enforcer allows the agent to be able to authenticate users, proxy the OAuth token to the MCP server, so that now SecuPi knows the original identity of the user, and then broker access to the database and data systems with a generic account while knowing who's the original user. Once accessing the data, SecuPi can now enforce access control and de-identification policies to encrypt the data, mask the data, generalize the data, filter the data, so the users will get only the data that they are allowed to see, while providing tamper-proof audit trail. Again, that audit trail will include who's the original user, what data was accessed, and also a risk score. So more data and more sensitive data that was used will have a higher risk score, which would allow for an easier investigation of data breaches. The second component SecuPi provides for AI is the SecuPi database and file enforcers. This helps us detect sensitive data at rest, either in a database or in a file storage. So we can discover that data and classify it. Then we can extract the entity of that sensitive data and encrypt the data at rest. That can be in files or in databases. Now that you have encrypted data, the data is now ready to be used by AI because you have referential integrity, yet you do not expose PII information to the AI system. All those enforcers, of course, work with the SecuPi other enforcers for analytics and business applications, and they all share the same policies. So as long as you know who the users are, what locations they're from, what departments they're in, what titles they have, what level they are in the company, and as long as you know what's your sensitive data, or SecuPi will detect your sensitive data, you will be able to protect that data with the same policies across all of SecuPi enforcers. In order to know that information about the user identity, SecuPi can connect to different user attribute sources such as identity governance and administration, such as SailPoint or Active Directory or Entra ID. It can connect to key and secret management systems such as KMSs, HSMs, and secret stores like CyberArk and HashiCorp. And it can forward all of the events into your favorite security operations center systems such as SIEM solutions and SOAR solutions. And when we configure those policies are then being pushed into the enforcers. In this case, in AI, we have the MCP enforcer and the file and database enforcers. Once data was accessed, you will have standard auditing that will show you who's the actual user, how much data was accessed, what is the classification of that data, and what's the risk score of that data. When we talked about unstructured data, in files we can detect sensitive data. So in this case you can see a transcription of a call, and on the left hand side you'll see the source text. On the right hand side you can see after SecuPi scanned that data, SecuPi found the sensitive data, tagged it as sensitive data, and encrypted the values that are sensitive. Now the data is ready for consumption. So to summarize the challenges and the solutions for those challenges, AI lack of access control, which will result in compliance failure. The SecuPi MCP delivers the deterministic way to enforce access controls and automate compliance and audit reporting. For the opaque data pipelines that results in uncontrolled exfiltration of data, SecuPi provides brokering to the databases, so you don't need to create all those users in the database. SecuPi will connect the AI agent to the database with the generic account, but will apply all the controls, access controls on the original user. And lastly, for auditability deficit, which results in forensics liability, SecuPi delivers immutable end-to-end visibility to all AI-driven data interactions. And the audit will include the original user, the exact query that was sent to the database, the risk score, and the classification of the data. Please watch our next video that will demonstrate how the SecuPi MCP works with an AI agent. In our case, it will be Claude. Thank you very much for watching.